TechBash and Community Conferences with Ravi Ram.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast, deliver quality, and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. The podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure. ClearMeasure is a full-service software architecture and engineering firm serving companies using .NET, Azure, and everything Microsoft. We build mission-critical software and rescue failing projects, empowering software delivery with a proven approach. I am excited to announce that my latest book is now fully released. This book is about software leadership. It's called The 5 Pillars, Leadership for Effective Custom Software. The book is for anyone who's attempting to make custom software highly effective and the teams that build it. And if you want your team to deliver world-class results, this book could be for you. Teams are also doing book studies and discussions around it, and I'm excited about that. There's a book study guide. And if you, dear listener, would like a complimentary electronic copy of the book, just send me an email, and I'd be happy to get that to you. And for those of you who are in a lead architect or software executive role, you might want to join our monthly forums. These are interactive, deeply technical sessions that I enjoy facilitating myself, and you can sign up for those on clearmeasure.com. My guest today on the show is Ravi Ram. He is a software engineer specializing in .NET, Azure, and intensive high-stakes software. He started developing in 1998 with basic websites, and he moved from classic ASP using cart.asp onto other tech. And after learning about SQL injections when a client got hacked, he was hired by the California Department of Justice to do that security work. And he's completely self-taught and has contributed to countless software projects over 30 years. And I'm excited to be actually at the same event with Ravi right here in the same room. And Ravi, thanks for coming on the show. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thank you, Jeffrey, for having me.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. I wanted to talk to you because you recently, in the last few months, you went to a community conference called TechBash. And that's one of the great conferences in Pennsylvania. And there's community conferences and regional conferences all over the country. But those things have changed a lot since COVID. I want to dive into that and talk about community conferences. But before we get into that, I just want to help the guests get to know you a little bit more. If you're going to back up in your software career, you're doing a lot of interesting software engineering work right now. But what are the formative moments over the years that you think have kind of guided you to what you end up working on today?
Again, just like most developers that I meet, started off with web design, just helping out a neighbor with a website. And that took me into dynamic websites with classic ASP. And that took me into a weird area of a client getting hacked and then learning about SQL injections, databases. This was an Access database at the time. Got deep into that and then got into the .NET world. And wow, what a difference. And been doing that for 20 plus years now and been loving it. I really enjoy nasty code, really tangled code. You give me the busiest, nastiest, class files, and I'm just love refactoring and cleaning those up. That's where I really enjoy doing work on that.
Yeah, nice. One of the things I remember, and we have so many young developers that come into the industry, 1998 was the internet boom where companies were asking themselves the question, do we need to have a company website? Do we need to do this whole internet thing? Do we need to use this new technology? Whereas we look back, it's like, well, duh, yeah, kind of everybody does it in some way. But back then, they're really, right. and some people were going, we don't need that. We don't need that. That's just this newfangled. Could it be a fad? And we've had some different other technologies over the years that have kind of been the same question. But that was a hugely transformative moment for the software industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was weird because my neighbor just knocked on my door one day and said, hey, I know you work with computers. There's this thing called the web. Can you build a website for me? And I go, okay, let me look into it. And, put some HTML together and tried to host it somewhere, and it's just really difficult to do at the time. But yeah, it is now, you laugh back at those times when people were to ask, do I need a website? Do I need an email? It's like, yeah, you probably do if you want to get some business.
Yeah. Well, I know a little bit about this conference, but I want to have it from your perspective. What is TechBash?
TechBash is a .NET conference. It's out in Pennsylvania in the Poconos, I believe. And it is one of the first conferences I've attended post-COVID. And it's a very family-friendly conference. Most of the attendees brought their family with them, their kids. It was really nice and very friendly conference.
Awesome. And let's give a shout out to the organizers. Who are they? So we got the TechBash Foundation. So I know there's probably tons of volunteers. We can't mention everybody, but who really runs it and makes sure it happens?
Yeah, Jason Gaylord, Alvin Ashcroft, Chess Chadwick, who also I'll mention later on. He's presented there, and then Brian Mincini are the ones I believe that are on the foundation that were there at the conference.
Nice, and they've been doing this conference for quite a while. And you've always got the big Microsoft conferences and Google and Apple and big GitHub conferences, multiple thousands of employees, and those are corporate conferences. But with TechBash being a much more regional community conference, what is the feel when you're there?
It was incredible. The speakers were there walking around the hallways after every event or
session.
After every session, we were able to, meet up and talk to them. And it was really friendly, really tight knit, but just, it's not like a conference I've been before where it just, the information was flowing. The hallway tracks, as they call it, was amazing. I had a really good time. Yeah, the whole time there.
Nice. And every conference has to focus on some type of topic. So TechBash is very much Microsoft development focused, right?
Correct. Yeah. All Microsoft stack, up and down the stack. A little bit of React sprinkled in there, which is cool. I attended one of those. So they're incorporating quite a bit, but mainly focused on Microsoft, the whole stack.
Awesome. And you mentioned Kalahari, the resort and families. How many full families were there?
I want to say there was probably 400 attendees, 300 to 400 attendees, I think, maybe. And a good 80% had their family there. I was really shocked to see how many families were in attendance. I mean, they had a whole area with video games and board games for the kids. Some of the spouses were hanging out. They had the water park, and it was really nice. And during the meals, you can invite your family. So breakfast, lunchtime, you're sitting around with the family. So I think it's really good for the spouses to kind of see what we do all day, and also the kids to kind of be in. And they had sessions for the kids. So there's a few sessions on building blocks, on I think there was one even on like mini robotics or Raspberry Pi stuff that was really cool.
Oh, nice.
And some of the developers attended that with their kids, which was pretty amazing. I haven't seen that before.
That is pretty cool. And so, how many days?
It was a 2-day conference.
Okay.
I believe, yeah. I was out there for about 3 days, but it was 2 days of conference time, yeah.
Gotcha. So it's all Microsoft. Any topics stand out?
Yeah, so the ones I was interested in was a lot of the new AI stuff that's out there with Azure. And there's a speaker, Sam Gomez, who gave a talk on Azure AI and the document intelligence kind of engine they have. And that guy Sam was so amazing that afterwards, I was working on a client project where we had to parse some receipts. I asked him some silly questions I had because I'm kind of new to all of this. And a day later, he emailed me. I contacted with him. We've been communicating. I mean, it's amazing. I've never had a speaker do that, like reach out to me and say, hey, how's the project going? Do you need any help? Did you run into any roadblocks? I was like, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah,
so that was really cool.
Awesome. The document AI, quick summary, is it reading documents?
Yeah, so they have a specific AI engine for documents. So you can upload, let's say, a form. So they have tons of pre-designed templates or engines to read like a W-2 form, or in this case, it was a receipt, right? So you go to Target and you buy 4 items. This would parse out that receipt to store location, tax, percentages, discounts, and someone has already trained this engine specifically for a receipt or specifically for a government form. They have tons of these templates already ready to go. I didn't know that, and they're building more and more. So instead of me trying to train an AI to do this, I just picked, the document intelligence and said it was a receipt and uploaded a receipt, and it was 90 plus accurate on what it found, which is pretty amazing. It was pretty cool. Yeah, very cool.
I love that use case. It contrasts with some of the other use cases where people are trying to start with the assumption that this large language model has all the information in the world and you can just ask it a question as if it's a professor. Whereas this is saying, no, I'm not asking you to give me any knowledge. I have a receipt. I'm giving this machine a task. Locate the total. Locate this other stuff. And that right there, if we can get to this high level of determinism, then that stuff is hugely useful.
Yeah, it's huge because in the client I'm speaking about is they're getting tons of frauds with fake receipts right now. And this is a government contract that kind of reached out to me for some help. And they're getting hundreds of these receipts and some of them are fraud. And so we're putting that in an Azure table storage. And now we're looking at, okay, what date was this receipt? What store? What was the total amount and what was like the discount amount? And with the heuristics of that calculated up, we could say, hey, this is 90% a fraud because we have this somewhere else or this matches something else. But I mean, just imagine doing that manually. You got receipts coming, hundreds of receipts coming in, even thousands a day. And this AI engine can just absorb those. The employees are just taking pictures of them with their phones, uploading them, parsing them, putting into a table, very inexpensive, cheap, flat table that all we're doing is looking at the heuristics on this and calculating it out. It's pretty cool. And again, Sam, I saw it and I go, wow, This is exactly the use case I needed. It was just perfect. And again, Sam reaching out was really nice and going back and forth on some questions I had, it was really cool. And again, that's just one of the speakers. There's many speakers that actually reached out to me after the conference.
Nice. You mentioned before the show there was a number of sessions that kind of impressed you. What were the other ones? Yeah,
the next one was with Jess Chaswick. So I'm also dabbling in React the last couple of years. I'm trying to just get into more of the front end, and React's kind of the hotness for years now. Actually, it's pretty stable out there. So last couple of years I've been playing with React, and so I'm sitting in class, and Chad's there and doing his thing, and Jess Chadwick. Yeah. And afterwards, I just saw him sitting in the hallway, and I go, "Hey, Jess, I attended your class, and I had a question about the .env file." And he goes, "Oh man, what are you doing with that?" And I said, "Oh, I've got a GitHub action. I'm trying to, keep that env file clean, and depending on the environment." And we had a great conversation for like half an hour, and he pulled out his laptop and actually showed me code, and we sat there, and I go, "This is amazing. This is an expert in his field." He talked. Happened to have coffee together sitting. He pulls out his laptop and actually we went through code. I've never had that experience with any speaker before. Nice. And it was really cool. And then again, he reached out to me later and we chatted online. It was great. It was awesome.
That's cool. Yeah. Other sessions?
It wasn't really a session. I was getting a drink and I looked in front of me and there's this guy that I recognize from Twitch. And it was Jeff Fritz. He was just there, and I kind of didn't want to bother him, but he was just kind of hanging out. So I go, "Hey Jeff, seen you on Twitch," and he asked me a funny question. He goes, "Oh, what do you know about my Twitch station?" I go, "I know you wear different hats all the time. That's your thing." Right. And so we kind of laughed about that, and we had a great conversation about just making, because I believe he's doing a lot of the productions for a lot of the Microsoft. Produced shows now that are out there, the big tech conferences, the big releases. And we talked about reaching underserved communities. So people that can't spend $2,000 to go out and see this, like trying to get just that word out there online that, whether you can attend from a third world country or not. And we had a good discussion about that. I recently visited Kenya. And I told him a story about how I met someone there, and he was all excited about that. It was just a great conversation. And I sat back and I said, "Wow, this is the guy I see online all the time. He's huge in the community." Yes. And we just had a great conversation. So again, I've never been to a conference where you could just approach somebody, at the level of Jeff Fritz, let's say, and just talk and just have a great conversation. It was really nice. And I'm going back next year. Not only to meet the people I work with, but to also talk to these speakers. And it was really, really well done as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, Jeff Fritz has been a guest on this show a couple of times.
He knows you. Yes, he actually said that you got him involved in speaking. He just spit out your name and just went off. So it was pretty cool to make that connection as well. That through somebody else, I knew you, knew him, and so it was nice. It was nice. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's busy. He's doing
Very
tons of
busy.
things
Yeah, I
all the
don't know
time.
how he does everything. And he's there at the conference, So, and he gave a lot of, I think it was Blazor. He was talking on Blazor and that.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's his thing right now. So
So at the big Microsoft conferences, this it's all about the marketing strategy and the message and what themes are kind of planned for the next year and alignment and whatnot. And they got to keep on schedule. But at these regional conferences, the different feel, you got the hallway conversations. When you're walking around, what types of things popped up just in the hallway?
So again, I bumped into somebody that I had worked with 11 or 12 years ago. His name was Jeremy Clark. He's
Yeah.
done,
Hello, Jeremy.
and I remember this is the time he lived in Orange County. I'm from Orange County, and actually we hired him for just a couple of sessions on. Got to remember now what we were working on, but I saw him there. I'm like, hey, Jeremy, and he kind of looked at me like, I kind of know this guy. I don't. And we had a great conversation, and we talked about his move out of the state and everything. So it's just, again, everyone is so friendly, approachable. I've been to conferences where the speakers got this golden badge they've got on, and they're only huddling with other speakers. This was very open. Also, after I attended some of especially that AI, the document session, I spoke to other developers that I haven't met before. I met two guys from Panama that worked on the Panama software in the Panama Canal.
Cool.
And we were just talking to them, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. It was just very, very open, very friendly, non-marketing, no gimmicks. No one's trying to sell you anything. They're just there to give their knowledge out. The class size was the session size was maybe 30, maybe 40 at the most. So it was very approachable to talk to the speakers afterwards or before. And it was really nice, really, really tight group, and it was good. It was awesome. Yeah.
So coming away from the conference, are there any technologies or patterns that are kind of in your mind thinking, I need to dive in deeper to this? I heard something and I want to get into it.
Yes, there was one that I attended just kind of randomly, got in there, and it was adding more logging. So there's got some notes on it, and it was the builder pattern on adding some OpenTelemetry logging, but actually adding a configuration and passing down from the parent caller all the way down the telemetry. So if you've got a session ID, but you don't want to pass that down from the parent class to the child class to the grandchild class, you can actually set that in a config to say every log from this point on, when someone enters this path, we're going to tag it with the user ID or the session ID or the cart ID. And that was really cool. I didn't even know you could do that. Kind of blew my mind that you could set this high level configuration either on, in the program file or way up on top or, when they enter a path. So I that was something that I've never even heard of. I'm like, why doesn't everyone know about this? Because, every time I do logging, I've got to pass that user ID somewhere down the stack, and this way you could set it up on top. And it was pretty amazing. So it's having to do with the builder service, the logging service with OpenTelemetry. So scope logging, that's the name. There it is. It's called scope logging, and you're able to do that at the parent level.
So I can understand singleton. You can everything in that process. Can it scope it to a call stack?
It can scope it all the way from the parent all the way down, and it was called scope logging, and you could set that up, and it was pretty sweet. I haven't played with it too much. I've tried it a couple of times. I need to play with it a little bit more, but it's really cool on that. And I don't have the speaker's name. Wow, I can't believe I don't have his name in my notes, but it was an awesome class.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And OpenTelemetry, it's been really ready for prime time for a number of years, but developers are just adopting it. And more so than, the libraries are helpful and the tools where so much can be made automatic, but it's the principles of just answering the question, okay, what are the basics of telemetry? What should I be recording about how my software is operating so that I can know that it's doing the right thing, that it's healthy, that it's stable, and that there's no current issues.
Yeah, and it's we do tons of logging with our current client, and we're following that stack all the way across, right? That the trace all the way across. We started tagging more and more. The current client is working with like quotes, so it would be the quote ID of the person who's doing something, and you can follow them on. So if there's a a hiccup or a delay, or hey, the response time's 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. We can follow that trace all the way from the initial call on the page, all the way through the C# code, all the way to the database, the SQL call, and all the way up, and we can see each trace and how long that took. With OpenTelemetry, I think it's just going to be standardized a little bit more. And I think App Insights is now using that or has that built into it. And so, it's a nice pattern, a standard that I think the community is going to go around. So whether I'm working on a C# stack or a different stack, like at least the logging will be consistent and the tooling will get much, much better. And I believe with OpenTelemetry and Aspire, it will give you a great view as to what's going on throughout your entire code base. And Aspire, I believe, is free. Whereas these other vendors, third-party vendors, Datadog, and some of these big boys, it's very expensive to start logging there, And so with Aspire and OpenTelemetry, I think it's going to be a huge insight as developers. When I'm writing a code, I've got a for each statement that's doing some string parsing. How efficient is that? Is that actually working well? And hitting a database with some of those calls, I can actually see where I could optimize these 200-300 milliseconds down to 10 milliseconds. And it's a very, I think it's going to be awesome once we adopt the OpenTelemetry. And it's hard to move clients over there. It's a lot of work to kind of re-engineer their logging to do that. So, but hopefully we can all get there.
Yeah. And with telemetry or any of these other patterns, it seems that just regular, good, decoupled object-oriented code gives plenty of seams and opportunities to layer in places to add this functionality without actually having to change the classes that are doing the real logic, that are doing the real work.
Yeah, and I love the word you use there, seams. So it was Louis Falco, I believe it was. He gave there's a YouTube talk where they were slicing and dicing, refactoring code and getting these seams in there. So if you've got a class file that's 1,000 lines long, right? That's absolutely, we know that's not right.
Yeah.
And he talked about seams and slices. And I'm really enjoying that. Refactoring nasty code, breaking them down to small functions, and finding those seams and slices where you can just say, hey, that's a small method. Let's just put that there. It's testable, and you can really see how fast that's working with the telemetry. It's all about, re-architecting that and cleaning that up.
And that is a great word. This is a good place to make a plug for kind of an old book now, maybe back from 2004, Working Effectively with Legacy Code by Michael Feathers. And the concept seams is talked about extensively. There's so many places now, but
right.
It really, for the younger developers who are hearing, well, I've never heard that word before. It's a really important concept because, in that book, the plug that I'm making is not just identifying legacy code, it's working effectively with it. How to identify legacy code, why it's legacy, and then changing something about it so that it's just regular code again that you can work with.
Absolutely, yeah. And if it's fancy, it's my eye twitches a little. I see a code smell when everyone says, "Oh, this is fancy code," and I've got 7 or 8 ternaries within a statement. I'm like, can we just make that into a nice Boolean? Is allowed, is not allowed, and just clean that up. Another person that I follow is called Sandy Metz. Sandy is a Ruby developer, and she's got guidelines on clean code. And hers are pretty strict. She says they're kind of fluid, but one is like, all right, if your class is more than 20 lines long, there's something going on. If your parameters you're passing in are more than 3 parameters, there's probably an object in there that's hidden that should be passed in. And whenever I write code, I try to follow that. Okay, how many lines is this? I know it's not a great way to do it, but it really makes me stop and think, wow, I'm at 40 lines on this method. There's probably other things going on in here. Let me extract that to a utility class. Oh, wow, that can be used in 6 other places. Now that eliminates that. So Sandy Metz has a great talk on that, and I believe there's I'll try to get you the link for your show notes, but it's a really nice pattern to follow for new developers that are, especially when you're working with legacy code and seams. It's like, okay, let's rip this out into smaller pieces, small chunks that can be tested and and looked at. So. And it's easy. There's a great book we had in our book club, which is interesting. I'm part of a book club, and it was a code that fits in your head. And I can't remember the author's name, but that right there tells a lot. Does that code that you're looking at fit in your head? Can you walk outside, get a cup of coffee, come back in, and actually have that code that you looked at fit in your head? And that's a great way. I don't know why, but the little light bulb went on. I love refactoring, but these little comments that you can tell another developer, does that code fit in your head? Can you walk outside and come back in and tell me what that code does? And then you wrote some good code.
And so who wrote that book?
I believe that was Mark Seaman. Yeah, and that's another thing. Besides the fact the book club that I'm with, it's some senior level developers with a couple of newer developers in there. Good discussions, and I'm not a big reader. I mean, I don't like reading. My wife is shocked that she'll see me outside reading a coding book with a highlighter.
Yes.
Absolutely shocked. But I'm out of a book, like let's say it's 100 pages, and I get 2 or 3 tidbits just like that. It's huge for my career, and it's huge for me when I present it to a client on why we should be fixing things and speaking a common language like code that fits in your head. That's very simple for anyone to understand, and it makes things you can explain things a lot easier.
Yeah, and Mark has been a guest on the podcast. He's a great guy, but that concept, and again, this is some of the things that I wish that I had been taught when I was in my first programming job. But what makes it fit in my head is that it's small and compartmentalized. And fast forward way ahead to I got married and had a family, and then my wife is all about organizing. And like we have drawers that are organized and pantry that have compartments upon compartments and organized. She loves the Container Store. It's the same thing in code. They have containers that break down to the smallest little level. We have a little compartment that has spoons only, forks only. If it was up to me, there'd be a drawer, and just like, oh yeah, stuff's in the drawer.
It'd be
you can see it.
100 knives and 1 fork.
Yeah,
that's what I would have.
It. Just take what you need. You can see it. It's all there.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing in code. It's like no. We're going to compartmentalize down to the individual concept.
Yeah, and that also helps you do these utility classes because you'll find out that you're repeating a lot of this code. And the dry principle is great, but sometimes you work around that. But when you literally see the same logger that's being recreated 100 times, create that logger class, and implement it so that if there's a bug, in the logger, you've got one place to go, not 80 places to go. And that's been really helpful with and I wish someone would have taught me this 20 years ago, literally, is, hey, keep it small, keep it simple, and testability, right? So testability is huge now. I'm getting into Postman quite a bit to a lot of testing, and I really want to test some really tight methods that do one thing and one thing well, and it's helping quite a bit, even with the testing frameworks that are out there.
Yeah.
The dependencies are killing me on some projects. They've got 8 dependencies that really don't have anything to do with the actual core of what the method's doing. So ripping those out and making them testable has been really helpful. So seam. I love the word seam. Yeah, that's a great word. I'm glad you said that.
Well, to close out on TechBash, there's obviously some speakers have been doing it a long time, written books, speaking at bigger conferences, but there were other speakers who maybe that was their first time speaking, or that was the largest conference that they've spoken at. How would you encourage someone to speak if they're thinking, man, that'd be cool. Could I do that?
Well, I'm actually looking at trying to speak too. So I've been researching this for the last few months because of TechBash. It was such a open, non-scripted kind of place to present something cool that you've learned, right? And I love that concept where you learn something cool and you want to tell people about it, but you're like just sitting next to one guy, or maybe it's just my wife in the kitchen who really doesn't care what I'm talking about anyway. But to get up and say, hey, and it's the simplest things, right? Like we talked about a seam or this tool that's already built that no one knew about or that you stumbled upon, or you're doing it a different way. So I would say, even if you're a junior or even if you're a senior and you think that you're doing this thing over and over again, everyone must know about it because you use it. They don't. And it's something out of your tool belt that you can pull out that, okay, we know what a hammer is, but have you used a hammer in this way? Or have you thought about this with the hammer? And it's like, wow, that's cool that you did that. This little light bulb moments, and again, I was there several days and attended these sessions. If I just pulled out 2 or 3 little things I can add to my tool belt or use that tool a different way, I look smarter than I actually am, right? So people will be like, wow, that's amazing you did that. I go, well, actually, I just learned that last week or, last month and implemented it. And you add those up over 10, 15 years, and you're a professional now. You actually know what you're doing from, kind of learning these small little bits all the way along. So, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, thanks for coming on the show and sharing about your experience with TechBash. This is really, really informative, and we'd encourage any of the listeners who haven't checked it out to look it up and other community conferences that might be near you. But thanks, Ravi, for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Enjoyed this.
My pleasure. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.